science, and for today we'll talk about our first lesson of the term 3, measuring the size of economy. First, we talk about the four different sectors that contribute to the Philippines economy: the agricultural sector, industrial sector, service sector, and informal sector. Each sector represents each of the services provided, each of the production of the goods and services we are consuming here in the Philippines. And we'll take a look at each other one by one. We go first with the agricultural sector. Agricultural sector is known as the primary sector since our raw materials came from the sector. It also includes establishments engaged in growing crops, raising animals, harvesting fish and other animals from farms or their natural habitats. We have four components in the agricultural sector. We have farming, fisheries, forestry, and animal husbandry. All right. We go first with farming. It is the act of or process of working the ground or working on the ground, planting seeds, growing edible plants. We can also describe raising animals for farming if we are going to make it as milk or meat. That is also farming. When we talk of fisheries, but we'll talk along of the meat on the forestry. When we talk of fisheries, this is gathering of fishes in different types of water. And we have three types of fishing. We have commercial fishing, municipal fishing, and aquaculture fishing. When we talk of commercial fishing, it uses boats with a capacity of more than 3 tons for commercial or business activities. Mostly they use fishing vessels, and their scope of operation is with outside 15 kilometers of the jurisdiction of a town or a government. When we talk of municipal fishing, it takes place within 15 kilometers of municipal territory and uses a boat with a capacity of 3 tons or less and doesn't require the use of fishing vessels. When we talk of aquaculture fishing, this refers to the care and cultivation of fish and other species from different types of water: fresh water, brackish water, marine water. All right. We also have forestry. Forestry is an important source of plywood, lumber, timber, and veneer. Apart from this, rattan, nipa, anahaw, bamboo, honey, and amalsigar resin selling are also profitable. When we talk about forestry, we talk about resources that can be used as plywood, lumber, timber, veneer, mainly woods. Also, this is where our furnitures came from. That's why we have rattan, nipa, anahaw, bamboo, honey, and amalsigar resin. That can give that can help the agricultural sector. Correction, as I've said earlier, we are talking when we talked about farming. It is not forestry; it would be animal husbandry or taking care of animals. But now we go with animal husbandry. It is an economic activity that includes taking care of animals. It consists of raising a carabao, cows, goats, pigs, chickens, ducks, and other. And it also helps in supplying our needs for meat. So this is the importance of the agricultural sector. This is what they produce, and this is the components of the agricultural sector. But each sector faces problems. Now we go on with the problems that the agricultural sector is facing. So these are some problems of the agricultural sector. Climate change. We all know that climate change is a global phenomenon happening around the world, and it helps or destroys our nature. Pollution and environmental depletion. Pollution and environmental depletion is one of the causes of climate change, and that is why agricultural sector faces a problem with that. We also have inadequacy of capital, wherein more of the farmers doesn't have money or capital or investments that can help them produce more crops or produce more raw materials. We have lack of support from the government and new generations. There are some government interventions, but it is still lacking. And most of us, let us admit that we don't prefer being a farmer or a fisher. We prefer to be more businessmen, and that is one of the problems of the agricultural sector. And also inadequacy of infrastructures. We lack of equipments, infrastructures that can be used in producing goods or raw materials from the agricultural sector. Now, these problems are being answered by the government. That's why we have government institutions that caters the agricultural sector. We have Department of Agriculture. It is where the promotion of agricultural developments, policy frameworks, public investments, and support services needed for domestic and export-oriented business enterprises concerning with agriculture. That is Department of Agriculture, and our Secretary of the Department of Agriculture is our President, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. We also have Department of Agrarian Reform, which upholds and implements comprehensive and genuine agrarian reform, which actualizes equitable land distribution, ownership and agricultural productivity, tenure security for, of, and with the tillers of the land towards improving their quality of life. When we talk of agrarian reform, we talk about land reforms, giving equal land distribution for the tillers and the owners of land, who owns the land, and agricultural productivity and their tenure security, especially for the farmers, and help towards improving their quality of life. And our Secretary of Agrarian Reform is Secretary Ron Conrado Estrella III. And we also have the ENR, Department of Environment and Natural Resources. They are the ones responsible for conserving, managing, and developing the country's environmental and natural resources. They're also the one to preserve our agricultural lands. And our secretary is Secretary Maria Antonia Yulo Loisaga. That is for the agricultural sector. And we now go on with the industrial sector. Industrial sector. This is the sector that uses the products from agricultural sector and process them into products that are either consumed by us or sold for further processing. We have 10 components under the industrial sector. We have industry, industrialization, manufacturing, construction, mining, electrical, gas and energy, telecommunication, transportation. We have industry. Industry is the process of producing goods by using machineries and factories. Industrialization is the transformation from a agricultural society into a manufacturing society or to an industry. Manufacturing, when we talk about manufacturing, we talk about processing of raw materials into finished products or utilizing small scale or large scale operations. We have constructions. This is where building or fixing structures or infrastructure like houses, bridges, roads, or buildings. We also have mining or the extraction of minerals from the land. We have electricity or electrical, which includes automation technology, power monitoring and energy distribution, digital and wiring infrastructure. We have our water or hydro. This is where our household water distribution, sewage and drainage system, irrigation, bottled water company, dams, and hydro infrastructures came from. We have gas and energy. We have petroleum and oil companies, natural gas extraction, power plants, and energy marketing. Telecommunication. This is where our network to communicate with other people. Transportation. It is our way of going to point A to point B. And remember, class, that manufacturing is one of the biggest industries in the Philippines. This is one industrial sector class. As of 2019, from Philippine Statistics Authority, 19.7 of the labor force belongs to the industrial sector. and 30.75 of our national income came from industrial sector. Now we go on with the problems of the industrial sector. There are problems related to industrial sector are the following are skills gap, dependence on imports, environmental concerns, lack of national industry, inadequacy of infrastructure. Skills gap is wherein an individual applied to a company, but the company's needed skills is not aligned with the skills he or she has. Dependence on imports, let us admit, most of us depend on imported products, I mean from other countries. Environmental concerns, yes, such as the concerns in towards with mining, concerns towards the transportation companies, lack of national industry. We lack of national industry. We are lacking of national industry because we only have few national industries in the Philippines. Inadequacy of infrastructure. Again, we are lacking of equipment to be used for the industrial sector. And these problems are answered and intervened by the government institutions. We have DTI, promotion and development of MSMEs through various assistance and interventions. MSMEs are micro, small, and medium enterprises, and they have an important role in developing the Philippine economy. Department of Trade and Industry talks about the promotion and development of goods and services that can be traded or industries that would help or that would procure goods and services. And our DTI secretary is Secretary Alfredo E. Pascual. We have TESDA, or Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, that is responsible, all right, that is responsible for technical education and skills development. All right, this bridges the gap between the skills gap problem that helps individuals to be able to gather skills that are globally competitive. And our Director General for TESDA is Secretary Director General Danilo Cruz. Okay, we're done with the industrial sector. We go on with the service sector. On the other hand, class, it is the source of labor skills and knowledge necessary to accomplish various economic activities. There are three components under the service sector. We have finance, real estate, transportation, storage, and communication. When we talk about finance, this coordinates the funds that enter, exit, and circulate within the economy or within the Philippines. Real estate, this is concerned with the needs of citizens to find homes and business spots. We have transportation, storage, communication. They provide carriage of people and delivery of goods and services to people safely, immediately, and properly. Banks, real estate, brokers, Grab, Food Panda, smart communication. This is where the service sector is. And most of the time, service sector is the worker or the labor force. We have problems facing the service sector. All right. Problem number one is most of the Filipinos going abroad to work. The main reason why we have OFW is because of the Filipinos seeking for higher income to be able to give a more comfortable life for their family. Also, one cause of Filipinos going abroad to work is brain drain, wherein it happens when skilled individuals and professionals leave their home countries and go elsewhere to take advantage of better opportunities. We have skills gap, wherein the skills an employer expects and the skills that an employee has. Worker contractualization. One of the problems of the Philippines is because contractualization violates workers' right to organize and collectively bargain for higher wages, economic benefits, social security, better terms of employment, and better work conditions. It has also forced workers into accepting unfair labor practices and violation of their political rights. That is on a employee side, but in an employer side, the worker contractualization gives them lower cost. And we have government institutions concerning the service sector. We have the other institutions. We have the other institutions we have talked about earlier. The Department of Agriculture, Department of Agrarian Reform, Department of Environmental Natural Resources, Department of Interior and Local Government, and Department of Labor and Employment. DA, DAR, and DENR has a Balik Probinsya Bagong Pag-asa program that encourages people in Metro Manila and other cities to return or relocate to their home provinces. They give transportation and relocation assistance, transitory family support package, livelihood settlement grant, transitory shelter assistance, and psychosocial support. We have the ILG that is responsible for promoting peace and order, ensuring our public safety, strengthening local government's capacity to effectively deliver essential services to society. Our DILG Secretary is Honorable Benjamin Benhur Avalos Jr. We also have Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE. They formulate policies, implements programs, serves as the policy coordinating arm of the executive branch in the field of labor and employment. So all labor codes are protected by the Department of Labor and Employment. DOLE Secretary is Secretary Bienvenido Laguesma. And now we go on with the informal sector. Informal sector. This sector composed of tiny units involved in producing or distributing goods and services, unregistered and not in official statistics. Even though the sector is not registered with official records and does not taxed by law, individuals' income can still contribute to national income through income tax and value-added taxes. The sector absorbs those who do not have regular jobs, lack skills and education, and have additional revenue. Because in the informal sector offers most of the time cheap variety of products, it gives competition and challenges to the market. We have different components of the informal sector. Home worker, online business work, small scale, medium tier, black market. Home worker are the works at home or near home to produce goods and services for a fixed agreement with an employer or contractor. They are usually paid on a piece rate basis. Online business work, home businesses, or conditional trade. Small scale. They operate businesses on their own. Sari-sari store, newspaper vendor, sidecar rider, small barber shop, massage parlor, cigarette vendor, and the likes. Medium tier, these are small businesses with informal workers. Warehousing includes not registered food kiosks and restaurants and local services that are with informal workers. We also have black market. These are the illegal businesses in the economy, such as drug trafficking, smuggling, illegal gambling, human trafficking, and kidnapping. That is black market. So that are the components of the informal sector. And we have problems of the informal sector. Problems of the informal sector, since they are not registered, they're unofficial businesses. We have decrease in tax. They can declare their own taxes through their personal incomes because their businesses are not registered. They don't have job security at the same time. They have security benefits issue wherein they retire, they won't get any benefit. They get low wages or lower salaries. And most of the time, when we talk of informal sector, they offer fake and illegal products. Sad. Now the government has to intervene again. We have government institutions for the informal sector. We still have DTI and TESDA, DILG, and we will add National Economic and Development Authority. It is an independent cabinet level agency of the Philippine government responsible for economic development and planning. So this is for our economic planning and economic development group. Okay, our National Economic and Development Authority Secretary is Secretary Arsenio M. Balisacan. Now we're done with the sectors of the Philippine economy. We now go on the national income and accounting. First thing to consider when it comes to the status of the economy of the country is economic growth, unemployment, and inflation. Economic growth measures the prevailing standard of living in a country. Okay? Unemployment measures the number of people who are part of the labor force and who doesn't have a job. Inflation, it is the sustained increase in the overall level of prices of goods and services. All right? That is inflation. Now we go on to the measuring of national income. We have our gross domestic product and gross national product. Gross domestic product is the value of all final goods and services produced within a country in a given year. Or we can say it as GDP. Or we have other acronyms such as gawa dito sa Pilipinas. Right? That is gross domestic product. When we talk of gross national product, it is the sum of the gross domestic product and net factor income from the rest of the world. When we talk of gross national product, it is based on the output of individuals and companies of a country where they are situated and the GDP based on what happens within the geographical borders of a country. So gross national product includes GDP and output of individuals and companies that are Filipino. Okay, that are Filipino. That is part of gross national product. Or we can call it as GNP. And we also have an acronym for it as Gawa ng Pinoy. Okay, we now go on and proceed. We have different approaches to national accounting. We have expenditure approach, income approach, and value added approach. Expenditure approach is the sum of all expenses on final goods. Income approach is the sum of the payments for different factors of production. That's why we have wages, interest, rents, and profits. We also have value added approach, which is the difference between the value of goods from the stage of production and the cost of goods at the stage of production. Take note, class, that we are always taking into account the final goods to avoid double counting. All right? What are final goods? They are goods at the furthest stage of production at the end of a year. Double counting is where the output is counted more than once as it passes through production steps. This means that the following are not included in the computation of the GDP. Intermediate goods or the raw materials, transfer payments are not included in the GDP, and used goods. So we're gonna focus more about the expenditure approach. Now we have the demand side components of GDP. We have Y is equals to C plus I plus G plus NX, wherein Y is gross domestic product, C is for consumption or the household consumption. All right, this is where we consume and spend. I is for investment expenditure. This is where the expenses of the business sector refer to machineries and equipment brought by the business sector. And we have government expenditure or the government's expenses to produce goods and services to the country or to the locality. We have net exports, the contribution from the transactions with the foreign sector. This is also exports subtracted the imports. Okay, now we go along. Now we're done with the formula of GDP and we'll compute later on. We now talk about the two types of GDP. We have nominal and real GDP. If we are going to look at the Philippine Statistics Authority, they have different data. We have their nominal and real GDP. All right. When we talk of nominal GDP, this reflects the raw numbers in current prices unadjusted for inflation. Okay. Real, while real GDP is adjusted or adjust the numbers by fixing the price value, eliminating any distortion caused by inflation or deflation. The main difference is that real GDP is adjusted for inflation, while nominal GDP is not adjusted for inflation. Nominal GDP measures the value of goods and services produced in a country at current market prices. Okay? Reflects both the changes in output and changes in prices. In contrast, class, the real GDP measures the value of goods and services produced in a country using constant prices from our particular base year. By adjusting for inflation, real GDP provides a better measure of the economic performance of the country. Okay? And we have the components of GNP or gross national product. It starts, for example, also with GDP or the gross domestic product, then added the net property income or the resident's investment income from overseas, subtracted to the foreign resident's income earned within a country. That is net property income. But if you're going to look at the data, it's already provided in the PSA. We'll look onto it further. So this is an example. This is from the Philippine Statistics Authority. This is our expenditure for the quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4 of 2022. So kind of look at it. Disregard the statistical discrepancy because statistical discrepancy is only used to know the difference between the quarters. Okay, now we go on. We try to compute it. All right, so as you can see here, we have our year 22, quarter 1 and quarter 2. All right, what are we going to do? First and foremost, we add household consumption, investment expenditure, and government. And we subtract exports and imports and add it both. And our gross domestic product is 4,931,328. Or we have household consumption plus investment expenditure plus government expenditure plus exports minus imports. It is gross domestic product. Then after you get the gross domestic product, you add the net primary or property income and you get the gross national product. Okay? All right. I will just laser point so that you could know. So as you can see here, household consumption added by investment expenditure, added by government expenditure, added by exports, minus the imports, it is 4,931,328. Okay? Add the net primary income or net property income, which is 241,425. That is 5,172,753. That is our gross national product for the year 2022 quarter 1. Wherein on quarter 2, we have 5,361,748 for the GDP, and our gross national product is 5,659,799. So that's how to compute it. Okay, next. We now compute to the growth rate or the percentage of the economic growth. All right. So we're going to use the same data again. Okay. So when we talk about growth rate, we talk about previous GNP or GDP and the current GDP or GNP. Okay, so the formula is current GDP subtracted by previous GDP divided by previous GDP multiplied by 100. So we go on with the first one. For the GDP, growth rate of GDP, it is 5,361,000, which is the quarter 2, minus the quarter 1, 4,931,328, divided by the quarter 1, which is the previous 4,931,328, is equals to 0.08728. Multiply by 100, it is 8.72%, or 8.728%, or 8.73% for the growth rate. It means that the GDP increased from quarter 1 to quarter 2 of the year 2022. And for the GNP, our gross national product, we have 5,659,799 for the quarter 2 as our current, and 5,172,753 for the quarter 1 as the previous, divided by 5,172,753 is equals to 0.09415. Multiply by 100, our product is 9.415% or 9.42%. It is also an increase from the quarter's GNP. Okay? Always remember that if it's a positive, it is, if the growth rate is positive, that means our GDP or GNP increased. If the percentage is negative, that means our GNP or GDP decreased. So we're done with computing the national output. We now go on with the next one. Unemployment and inflation. Another way to measure the economy status is through employment and inflation rate. Unemployment is referring to people that are employable and aggressively searching for a career but are unable to find a job. The individuals in the workforce who work but do not have a good job are included in unemployment. Okay? And when we talk about inflation, it's the decrease in a given currency's buying power over time. Okay? There is also a negative inflation or decrease of the most prices in the economy. This is called deflation, which usually occurs in recession. Now, if there's an outburst of inflation or the prices rise uncontrollably, we call it hyperinflation. Low inflation rate is better than both deflation or hyperinflation. So, super lower inflation is deflation, which is bad as well, and super high rise of prices, it causes hyperinflation, is also bad at the same time. So we have different causes of unemployment and inflation. All right. We have different causes of unemployment. We have frictional unemployment, wherein an unemployment caused by voluntary changes of employment within an economy. For example, I have changed place or I have relocated to another place. That's why I need to work within my location. That's why I quit my job. That is frictional unemployment. Structural unemployment is caused by individuals who have not been employed and lack the skills needed by the firm. For example, I am applying for a social science teacher, but the school that I'm applying needs English subject teacher. That is structural unemployment. Next, cyclical unemployment. These are the changes in the economic status of a country causing unemployment. For example, a firm is experiencing recession. So what they will do is to lower the quantity of labor and at the same time lower the wage they will be giving to the workers. That is cyclical unemployment. When we talk about causes of inflation, we have demand pull, cost push, and built-in inflation. When we talk of demand pull inflation, this is due to a positive change in the purchasing power of individuals, wherein they can demand or they can buy more of the product. Since there is a greater demand for the product, it will make the producers increase the price to maintain the demand or to balance the demand and supply. Cost push inflation is cost when there is a change in the price in production inputs or there are events that influence the price of production process. This will result to a higher spending in order to produce final goods and services. For example, cost push inflation. The price of palay increase. The price of palay increase. Automatic, the price of the rice or the sack of rice that we will be eating, will also increase. Okay? Because the production input is the palay. The output is the rice, the milk. That is cost push inflation. When we talk about built-in inflation, there is an expectation in an increase of prices in the future. For example, increase in price of products will demand an increase in wages. For example, the price of oil rise to 70 pesos. Automatic, the people are expecting that the price of fares and transportation in public utility vehicles will also increase. Okay? That is built-in inflation. All right? Let's hear a word from Adam Smith, wherein he said that no society can surely be flourishing and happy, of which by far the greater part of the numbers are poor and miserable. So Adam Smith is telling that economic growth is when everyone are no longer poor and miserable. With that, class, thank you very much, and I'll see you on our next lesson. And have a great day and leave Jesus in our hearts forever.